Recording in progress.
Good morning and welcome to the another session of ESA examination series that I've been doing it in the past. I hope you all have gone through the modules 1, 2, 3. So I thought of giving you the important points, or rather the important concepts for the module 4. And the module 4 deals with information systems, operations, and management. Without wasting much of a time, I'll start the presentation. So the information system audit module 3 deals with information systems and operations and management. And it has got 4 chapters, which are as follows: that is information system management, information systems operations, information operations and management, and incident response and management. Now, from the exam point of view, definitely you should expect at least 4 or 5 questions from this area, because this is an important aspect. Because as we move from module 1 to module 6, the frequency of the questions starts increasing, right? So in this particular presentation, I'll be reviewing the important concepts related to recovery time objective, which they often refer to as RTO, and recovery point objective, that is RPO. I'll be talking about the alternative recovery sites. I'll also be talking about the physical network media. I'll be talking about alternative routing, diverse routing. I'll be talking about the components of LANs, which is very, very important. And I'll be talking about the backup schemes and the security testing tools and techniques. Starting with the recovery time objective and the recovery point objective, these are important concepts, and especially they're concerned when the systems, information system are down for certain reasons. So these concepts are related to that. Now, we can understand that there are certain systems which are very critical, and the other systems are there which are not that very critical. Now, for a critical system, recovery time objective is 0 or near 0, which means if any system which has got a critical data which cannot be kept or which cannot be suspended even for a fraction of a second, for that system, recovery time objective is 0 or near 0. And for critical data, the recovery point objective is 0 or near 0. Now try to understand the RTO relates with critical system. Now system means that is the entire processing system we are talking about. But when we are talking about the recovery point objective, we are talking about critical data. We are not talking about the system, we are specific about the data. So when the systems are down, obviously the data cannot be processed. So the one where there are 2 definitions or the 2 criteria. The first says how much time can you afford if your system is down, or how much time you require to recover your system if the system is down. And the second, how much data you can afford to lose if your system is down for a certain period of time. So recovery time objective of 2 hours, let's say for instance, indicate that organization needs to ensure that the system downtime should not exceed 2 hours. System downtime refers to the period for which the system is unavailable. I made it very clear. Now, these RTO and RPOs, the organizations have to define beforehand. These are the policy documents which the organization needs to take care of it and define it before the implementing the system. Now, I'll just give you a small idea. For example, the banking operations. Now, banking, you will find that the recovery time objective as well as recovery point objective, both are very, very important, and they are almost near to 0, which means that they are of high importance, and the organization and the banks do not want their critical system even to be down for a fraction of a second. And similarly, they do not want their data to be lost even for a fraction of a second. Similarly, recovery point objective of 2 hours indicate that organization needs to ensure that the data loss should not exceed 2 hours of the data captured. Now, these 2 definitions say that, so for example, if you are having a non-critical system, right? So non-critical system means that it is not that very important for the basic core operations of the organization. So for that, in that case, you will find that such organizations or such definition by definition, RTO will be, slightly maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, depending upon the organization's operations. Similarly, for non-critical data, our recovery point objective can also be 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. But if it is a critical in the sense this is related directly to the core functioning of the organization, the very purpose of the organization, the business of the organization, which is dependent on that particular system, then in that case, the recovery time objective as well as recovery point objective both have zero or near to zero tolerance, right? So I have just summarized these points for so you should remember that. So how do you remember this RPO and RTO? RTO connects with the systems, and RPO is for the data. So if it is critical data and a critical system, it's zero or next to zero. And if it is non-critical, then it can have time limit depending upon the organizational policy. So the lower, if an organization is having a lower recovery time objective and recovery point objective, higher will be the cost of maintenance of the environment. Now, exactly try to understand if the system is very critical, how will you maintain that system? The maintenance of the system will be very high because you do not want to compromise with the system at all or at any cost. Same way, which means if banks have their recovery time objective and recovery point objective very low, which means the systems, information system, and the maintenance cost of the information system for the banking is extremely high because they cannot afford to lose the data, right? Similarly, a low RTO and recovery point objective indicate that the disaster tolerance is also low. Now, what do you mean by disaster tolerance? Now, suppose if there is a disaster that has happened because of which the system comes to halt. So, in that case, if any organizations, if by looking into the document, if I find that recovery time objective and recovery point objective for any organization is very low, it clearly means that the organization has a zero tolerance for the disaster. That means in case if there is a disaster happens, the organization will not like to take any risk. So they will like to maintain an alternative arrangements for their information system. So if disaster tolerance is low, then recovery time objective and recovery point objective should also be low. Now, these, again, I repeat it in every session I am talking about it, that I have used different colors over here while highlighting the text in the slides, which clearly indicates that these are not the sentences taken from the book or somewhere. These are precisely answers of the questions which have been asked in the past ESA examination. They are being reframed in such a way for you to understand. So that's why it is important that while you are listening to me through my videos, please do give importance to what I'm trying to say because each sentence has a meaning and it has a direct connection with the examination. Similarly, recovery time objective and recovery point objective, these are based on time parameters. Now, this is an essential. They're not based on any other parameters, but they're defined by the time, right? So lower the time requirement, higher will be the cost of recovering strategy. Now, if you remember, as I have mentioned earlier, recovery time objective as well as recovery point objective, if the time limit is very less, say for instance, half an hour, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, that clearly indicates that the system is very critical because organizations are not trying to in a sense, they're not trying, they are very careful about protecting their information system. So obviously they'll be spending higher investment as far as cost of maintenance and recovery is concerned. Now, when recovery time objective is low, then I'll be talking about these things later on. The mirror site or the hot site is recommended as a backup storage, right? When a recovery point objective is low, mirror imaging or real-time replication for data backup is recommended. And in case when the recovery point objective is zero, synchronous data backup systems are or the strategy is used. Now, these are the later part of the presentation. These last three points are trying to say, because when you are saying that when you are maintaining your digital assets, right, so you need to definitely have a backup or an alternative arrangements in the form that from where you can recall the data in case if any disaster or system crashes, right? So they are saying that so there are different types of alternative arrangements which can be done, and mirror site or known as hot site, mirror imaging or real-time replication for a data backup or synchronized data backup. These are the various alternative arrangements for the backup which an organization can opt But depending upon the cruciality of the data, the information system which they are maintaining, they can make a choice, because a mirror sites and the hot site will cost you different. Mirror imaging and real image time replication for data backup will cost you different, and synchronized data backup will be costing you different. So depending upon the urgency and the criticality of the data, you decide how much money you are going to invest in terms of your backup strategies. Now, as I mentioned earlier, so we've come to this third slide, which says I always try to give you points to remember. So remember that both RTO, that is recovery time objective, and recovery point objective, these are based on time parameters, right? So the lower the time requirements, higher will be the cost of recovery. So if question is asked, this says the recovery time objective and recovery point objective is nearly 1 minute or so, what will be the cost? The cost will be very high. If they say recovery time objective and recovery point objective for any organization or for any information system is, let's say, for instance, 40 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hour, then obviously there'll be the cost of recovery strategy, or which means the backup strategy will be lower. Now we move on to the next concept, which is the alternative recovery side. Now this is what I was talking about when the earlier require RTO and RPO, right? So alternative recovery site means these are the backup arrangements for the data which organization normally do, because they cannot rely on the original source of the data. So they always try to back up as a precautionary measure for ensuring that the data is available at all times. So there are alternative recovery sites are, that is, you are maintaining another website, or you can say that an alternative arrangement for your website, so that in case something goes wrong with the prime source of the website, immediately the system can be switched on and alternative arrangements can take up the place. So you can have mirror site, hot site, warm site, cold site, mobile site, and there can be a reciprocal arrangement. So I'll be talking about one by one. Now, mirrored itself, what does it mean? Exactly what is your original site? You are trying to maintain an image or a mirror copy of it. That is, you're maintaining a duplicate copy of the website. Now, services can be resumed immediately because you are simultaneously running two different sources of your of the same data, right? So, mirror sites are obviously when you are running. Now you understand that it's like that I'm driving a car and I'm having another car driving at the back of my car, so that in case something goes wrong with my car, I can switch my car and immediately move on. Will it be expensive or cheap? It will be definitely very expensive. So mirror sites, maintenance wise and service wise, are very, very fast, and they are very expensive. Now, what do these sites have? Mirror sites have, space, that is, storage space is available. They have the basic infrastructure. All the applications required as per the original website are there, and it has got updated data backups, which means you don't have to do anything. You just have to, switch from one URL to the another URL, and the website is up. Similarly, the next is hot site. Now, hot site is basically services can be resumed subject to the availability of the updated data backup. Now, in this case, everything is available with these hot sites. They have space and basic infrastructure. All applications are being provided in place, and everything is being ready. But they're not executed because they're waiting for the backup. So, how fast you can make the data backup available will be the time within which the services can be resumed. So now this hot site, the time frame within which you can make your alternative data backup available to the hot site will decide your RTO and RPO. Remember, that is recovery point objective and recovery time objective. Now, if it is, say, for instance, an hour or so, so accordingly your RTO and RPO will be defined. Here you will not find I have crossed the updated data backup, which means they are almost like a mirror site, but they do not have the updated data backup. Third is a warm site. It says services can be resumed again subject to availability of required IT applications and updated data backup. Now, in this case, also warm site in the sense it is a place ready. The website is ready. Space and basic infrastructure is there. Few limited applications are, basic applications are there, but specific IT applications which your system require need to be made available along with the updated data backup. So warm sites are you could try to understand, right? Like, say, for instance, you are about to take a marathon, so you're warming up. So you warming up means you are ready. you have put on your shoes and everything, you are ready, but you have not started running. When you will start running, and the time lag gap will decide how much distance you're going to cover, right? So warm sites, these are services available readily waiting for to be started. But if you wanted to start the services at the warm site, you need to get additional IT applications in case if it is required along with the updated data. Cold side, these services can be resumed subject to availability of the applications and updated backup, which means now here you will find that the basic IT applications are also not available. You'll find that they have the space and the basic infrastructure ready. Now, third is, so whenever I have across, you remember these all applications and updated data backup, which means that they are not available. You need to make them available. Then you have the mobile side. Now, mobile side are the processing facilities mounted on a vehicle and kept ready to be delivered. Now, it's like that. I'm maintaining a, must have seen, broadcast TV broadcasting's news services. They're on a mobile van, right? From wherever there is anything is happening, they take their van there. From there, they start broadcasting. The same way, mobile sites like that. These are the processing facilities which are mounted on a vehicle, which means your space and basic infrastructure is kept inside the vehicle. A vehicle ready with all necessary computer equipments can be moved to any warm or a cold site depending upon the need. Now, here you can find that the vehicle is ready with all the infrastructure and it can be moved from warm. Either you want to, if you're maintaining warm site or a cold site, right? Often you will find questions on reciprocal arrangements, right? Now, these are agreements between two organizations, mostly having similar processing features. They agree to help each other in case of emergency. Now, these reciprocal means I'll help you and you help me, reciprocate, right? So these are least expensive because they usually rely on agreement between the two firms, but they are also least reliable. Now, the question, what they're trying to say is, suppose if a bank A and bank B, they are on the similar type of services, which means that they require similar type of processing. So they can enter into a reciprocal agreement if they wanted to save the cost. But the point is, they're least reliable because they never know that. The question is, suppose if it's happened that A bank has an emergency at the same time B is also having emergency, then this reciprocal agreement will not work because B would definitely like to put their services first as compared to bank A. So in that case, this is the reason that despite being the cheapest, but it is not the reliable one. So if you wanted to points to remember, if you're talking about the alternative recovery sites, maintaining a mirror site is the most expensive. As I said, mirror means exact replica. You are running two things parallel. Remember always, mirror means like I'm driving a car and I'm having a backup car running parallel to my car so that in case something goes wrong with my car, I can switch the car. But this is an expensive affair. Maintaining reciprocal arrangement is the least expensive, I have discussed just now. Mirror site often offer the fastest mode of recovery than the hot site. Now, obviously, of mirrors, if I'm sitting in a car and running a car at the back of me, this is the fastest mode of recovery because I just have to open the door switch and sit in another car and move on. Mirror or hot sites are proper option for critical system. Again, it depends upon the criticality of the system. That means how important particular data is for your business will define what type of storage arrangements or alternative arrangements you're going to do. Cold site offer the slowest mode of recovery. Cold site means only the infrastructure is available, IT applications are not there, and even the data backup is not available. Now, cold sites are appropriate for option for non-critical system. If for the non-core functional operations, so organizations normally prefer the cold site. Reciprocal arrangements offer the lowest expenditure in terms of the recovery arrangements. We have talked about it. So if you have given a chart also, it says if you look at the mirror site, hot site, warm site, and a cold site, and these are the parameters which are available. So basic space and infrastructure you will find is normally available with mirror site, hot site, warm site, cold site. IT equipment for processing, that is, you require certain type of equipments. If you're for processing mirror site, it is available. Hot site is available. Warm site, only limited, and cold site, they're not made available. Database, if you're talking about mirror site, it is available. For hot site, it is not available. Warm site, not, and again, not. So you just have a look into it for a recap, right? Now, this is again important. This is more technical, so I hope you will be able to get what I'm trying to say. That's the physical network media. Now, in this, often the question comes, I'm not going into the sequential way of talking about physical network media. Now, physical network media simply means that physical devices, the tangible devices, connectors, which makes up the network. Now, what is a network? Network is a group of connected devices for information sharing and processing. In that case, such a network, we require a lot of tangible, devices, wires and cables and things like that. Out of that, we are talking about today two. One is twisted pair, also known as the copper circuits. Now, twisted pair cables they are talking about. They can be either shielded, they're called as STP, that is shielded twisted pair, or unshielded, or called as UTP technically. Now, these are when we are talking about cables, through cables or the wires through which the transmission takes place in the form of binary, that is zeros and one. Normally, you will find that you must have seen that if the length of the wire increases, the distortion increases, obviously because there is a data loss, right? So similarly, the why we are talking about, because we are talking in this we are in the physical network media, we are talking about twisted pairs because we wanted to talk about the data transmission and loss and data disturbance, right? What that we call it as a noise. So unshielded twisted pair, that means these twisted pairs are not shielded, as I've shown it here in the right hand side of the diagram. So it will has unshielded twisted pair will have more attenuation, that is weakening of the signal, because technically in the network terms, the weakening of the signal is called as attenuation or attenuation, whatever you call it, which means it has got more interference and it has more crosstalk. Now, more crosstalk I'll be talking about in terms of there will be a lot of interference. You must have seen that in our houses, if there is an old motor or something, which if you start put it on, which generates a lot of noise, you'll find that the distortion was there in our television, right? So this is basically I'm talking about on the same lines. When we talk about the shielded twisted pair, we talk about now look at it, the second diagram, which says, each of the pairs is shielded. Now, once you shield it, you will find that the weakening of the signal decreases. It has got less interference and the crosstalk is also very less. Now, I've defined it for you. What is attenuation? Attenuation is the weakening of a signal during transmission. That is, it's a process, right? During the process. The length of the wire impacts the severity of the attenuation. If the distance is too long, you will find that the weakening of the signal becomes very, very prominent. It is a transmission error that occurs in the wire as well as in the wireless communication. So attenuation, we talk whenever you talk about attenuation, we are talking about the transmission of a data getting weakened over a system or length. Crosstalk is electromagnetic reference from unshielded twisted pair to another twisted pair normally running in parallel. Now, crosstalk means that you can try, again, I say that instead of going into the technicality, try to understand crosstalk means like two phone lines getting connected with each other. So that when I speak, somebody else is listening, somebody else speaks, I listen. So you're crossing the connections in a way. So this crosstalks often happens. Then we talk about the fiber optics. You all must be knowing about it. That's fiber optics. So these are more secure in the sense because for the transmission, they're using the optical fiber. They have low transmission loss, as I have talked about it, and they're very, very preferred for high volumes and long distance calls. If you're sending a high amount for data and you are using a long distances, organizations prefer fiber optics. These are basically the glass fibers carrying binary signals as flashes of light. Now, when I say binary signals, whatever data is being transmitted from one place to another place, from one network to another network, be it wired or be it wireless, it always takes in the forms of binary. Binary means in two. Two means zeros and one. Computers do not understand everything has to be broken down into the components of zeros and one. That's a binary, which are then arranged in a combinations of bytes, sequence, and then accordingly it is being processed. Fiber optics are also not affected by electromagnetic interferences. That's what I said earlier. It happened that whenever you used to switch on a water motor, you'll find that there's a disturbance in television, right? But now it doesn't work because we are getting all the fiber optics are being used widely. Electromagnetic interference, if we talk about, is a disturbance generated by external source that affects the electrical circuit. I've given you the example, right? The disturbance may degrade the performance of the circuit or even stop it from functioning, right? So EMI, that is electromagnetic interferences, are caused by electrical storms, right? Noisy electrical equipments, as I have said, right? Now we move ahead to the alternative routing or diverse routing. Now, first we must understand what is routing. Now, to understand what is routing information means, it is guiding the information. For example, the best way to understand what is a router and what is routing. Suppose you are driving on a street, right? So you find that you come to a place which you call it as a chowraha, which has got four directions or four divergences or four, ways. So on those four ways, you find that you normally stop and look at which way you should go so that you can reach your final destination. Routers are like that. Those chowrahas, they have the addresses of all the four directions. So when a data reaches a router tries to understands and identifies that this data which I am receiving it should be put onto which path so that it ultimately reaches the destination. So alternative routing and diverse routing is a type of a technique of routing. That means transferring of information from one place to the another. Now, alternate routing methods of routing information is through alternative mediums such as copper cable or fiber optics. Now, these are the technical terms, technical medium which are used. It can be of two types: last mile circuit protection and long haul network diversity. Now, last minute provides redundancy for local communication too. Now, if you're talking about local communication in the sense that within the city, if you are transferring the data or you are transferring the data within the building or within the network, it provides for the local communication too. But when you talk about the long haul, it provides gap or redundancy in the sense it's stoppage or ideal time for long distance availability. Now, these are, I have come across one or two questions based on this. So I would just recommend that you should keep in mind that last mile is for local communication loop and long haul is for long distance availability. This is an important area because they normally ask questions on this. And again, it's a very technical one. There's a component of LAN that is repeater, hub, switch, bridge, and routers. I have spoken about the router. Now, to understand this, we need to give a reference of open system interface connection model. That is, it's a conceptual framework which describes the functions of a network system. That is, various layers are there, and these layers decides how the data is being processed and transferred from one medium to the another medium. It has got 7 layers, so which are like, say, for instance, the initial 5 layers are used for communication, and the 2 layers are used for the applications. So if you look at this diagram, it starts with the physical layer, the data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and the application layer. Now, this happens when you are sending the data, it goes from bottom to top, but when it is received at the other end, it goes from top to bottom, which means when I am sending my data, it first goes to the physical layer, then it goes to the data link layer, then it goes to the network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and the application layer finally presents the data to the system. At the other receiving end, you will find that what happens, the application layer converts it to the presentation layer, then it converts to session layer, transport layer, network layer, data link layer, and the physical layer. So at the physical layer, we will find that the device which is operational is basically the hub or the repeater. Now, hub or repeater, these are dumb devices. They do not have any intelligence of their own. Intelligence means they do not remember the machine address. When you talk about the data link layer, the second layer, these are devices which are operational at this level are switches and bridges. They're smart and they can remember the MAC address. At the third level, a third layer, that is a network layer, your device which is operational is basically a router. It's an intelligent, as I have spoken about earlier. And at the application level layer, that is the 7th layer, you will find that the device which is operational is a gateway. Gateway is a highly intelligent device, functional, operating at the physical network medium. Now, if I'm talking about continuing on the earlier slide, higher we move in the layer, we will find that the devices becomes more intelligent. If you find at the first layer, which is physical, we will find that it was the dumb hub and repeater. These are dumb devices, no intelligence. But when you move on to the application layer, you'll find that the gateway is the highly intelligent. So gateway is the most intelligent device, as I have mentioned. Hub, which is at the layer 1, is the dumb based, and the gateway at the 7 is the intelligent. So just keep in mind that this is what it is being done. I further given the explanation for what does these devices do. So a repeater works at the OSI layer, physical layer, and you will find that repeater receives and transmits signal. Repeats in the sense it is these are devices which will strengthen the speed, right? And for extending the network also. If you wanted to increase this frequency or the strength of the signal, you use normally repeaters. Hub, these are dumb devices used for broadcasting message. Now, when I say broadcasting message, and in the next slide, and the next for switches, I have mentioned that these are used for forwarding message. Now, when you say broadcast, like say for instance, radio broadcast, whether somebody is listening or not, it doesn't make any sense. It will broadcast. But when you talk about, on the contrast to broadcast, you talk about forwarding. That means forwarding means you are ensuring that the message reaches to the person for whom it is intended. So hub normally do not know who will be the recipient of the data. So it just simply broadcasts. Anybody who catches can receive it. But a switch will only transfer the data, or it's a smart device, or it will forward the message only after it understands the data is meant for which IP address. Bridge combines two or more LANs for extending the LAN facility, right? And the routers are intelligent. Switch routers they examine the IP address and can make intelligent decision, direct the packet to the destination. As I mentioned, they're like the chowraha, policeman standing at the chowraha. He or she, if you tell them that where you want to go, he will guide you, take route left, right, and then you will finally reach the destination. Right? Now we're finally coming to the end of this session. We're moving on to the backups, physical network media. Now we talk about the backup scheme. Now backup scheme is in the sense, it is very essential that we need to maintain the data backup, especially when we are maintaining the information systems, right? So there are various schemes for data backup I'll be talking about. This first is a full backup. Name itself suggests full backup means that everything is backed up. Whatever has happened, anything is happening, it is being totally backed up. So every time data backup is taken, a full database, irrespective of earlier backup, full backup requires more time and storage capacity. So it is definitely going to be very expensive. Incremental backup is taken only of data changed since the last backup. You see the diagram? This full backup is there in the orange. Then say, for instance, Monday, anything that has changed from Sunday to Monday, I'll only back it up. That's an incremental. Similarly, on Monday to Tuesday, Monday, and then again, if I'm taking a backup on Wednesday, which means I'll have a Monday backup, then I'll have a only backup for Wednesday, besides the full backup. So incremental means anything which has changed since the last backup will be considered for taking the backup. Now we are talking about the differential backup. Now backup is taken only for data changed since the last full backup. Now, suppose if the full backup is shown in the pink color, if it is taken up, let's say for instance, every fortnightly, after that, on Monday, whatever changes has happened between Monday, I'll record that. Then from Monday to Tuesday, whatever has changed, I'll record that. From Monday to Wednesday, whatever has changed, I'll record. And from Monday to Thursday, Monday to Friday. So that means instead of incremental backup where we see that individually they're doing it, now they're storing it for the range from Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday. Full backup obviously will require more time and storage capacity because you are not, you are just replicating the whole data. Differential backup. Now remember the sequence I have put in for you to, it's easy for you to remember. Full backup, if you look at from the storage point of view, the sequence would be full backup, incremental backup, and the differential backup. But from the examination point of view, we should remember the full backup will be the more time consuming and it has more storage capacity. Incremental backup require less time and less storage capacity as compared to the other two method. Now, other two method means as compared to the full backup method and as compared to the differential backup method. So after full backup method, the next more time consuming and storage capacity requiring will be the differential backup system. It requires less time and storage capacity, please read it carefully, as compared to the full backup, but more time and storage capacity as compared to the incremental one. So that is why it is being kept in between the full backup and the incremental backup. Now, restoration capability for each backup scheme. Now, restoration in the sense, if case there is a disaster or some emergency, how fast can you recover and put the system in place? Now, full backup offers the fastest restoration, obviously, because you are exactly maintaining the original data source in its original form. Differential backup will be slower than the full backup, but will be faster than the incremental. Again, you will find that it lies in between the full backup and the incremental backup. And the last is the incremental backup. This is the slowest of all the three because it will take time for it to understand how the difference of the data, date, and time can be managed. Now, we are talking about the certain security testing tools and techniques. Now, these are important because in my first slide, when I was talking about the risk management, sorry, not in the first slide, but in the first presentation, I've spoken about a concept called threats and vulnerabilities. Now, threats in an information system or a control system is basically from the external. It has got nothing to do with the internal controls. But vulnerabilities are internal threats. Now, these are the loopholes or the gaps which we have. We are responsible because of our omission or negligence, or the you can say that it's like that loopholes in my internal system which can be attacked by the external or which can be invaded by the person from the outside my network. So we'll be talking about network penetration test. Now, information system auditor uses this technique as it is used by a hacker to gain access to critical system and data. Now, what happened is that you must have heard what called ethical hacking these days. Now, what is ethical hacking means? The organizations like, say, for instance, Microsoft or maybe many other companies, software development companies, they develop their software and they leave it, they call it as a beta version and they give it into the public and they say that we appreciate if you can get into our source code or the hack our system, which means they wanted to find out where they have kept the vulnerabilities open, which the ordinary person can understand as a hacker and can invade their system. This helps in making their system more stronger. So the term is ethical hacking. Same way, IS auditor uses the network penetration test to find out where the system, how can he gain access to the system, whether the system gaining access to the system is easy or not, or can he not. Now, penetration testing is an effective method of identifying real-time risk to an information processing environment. Now, penetrating testing in the sense that when the environment is live, systems is being on, information is being processed. Now, I try to get into the system and make alterations just like a hacker or take a control of the entire system, right? So is it possible for me to not? It is a real-time risk to an information system. Now, objective of penetration testing is to verify the control environment of the organization and to take corrective actions in case if there is any deficiency noted. Now, when an IS auditor does the network penetration test, then obviously they have to inform the authorities beforehand, seek permission from the authorities beforehand. They must decide whether they have to do it in the live environment or they have to do during the office hours or non-office hours, because it requires very, very careful testing for finding it out the vulnerabilities. In penetration testing, there are attempts to bypass the security features of the system and exploit the vulnerabilities, as I have mentioned, to gain access that would otherwise be unauthorized. It should be performed by experienced and qualified professionals, which means that as a CA, as a chartered accountant, as an information system auditor, you have to be very experienced in doing this type of a testing, right? What are the risks for this? Inappropriate test plan may trigger escalation procedures, right? It's like a false fire alarm, right? You are trying to test it, but without informing the authorities and everybody, they may get into high action, right? Disclosure of sensitive information to the external tester may further increase the target's exposure level. Now, when you are talking, in case if your IS auditor is doing it, so you're trying, maybe it's taking help of any expert, then you're trying to share information with the external person, which may later on can use it as misuse that information. So that's all about this. Similarly, we are talking about Threat intelligence, that is, it is an threat intelligence is intelligence systems or intelligent information about the likely attacks. Now, threat intelligence, just like you have terrorist intelligence, security intelligence, weather intelligence, the same way you have threat intelligence. Every organization have. Now, these threat intelligence information is organized and provided by the service providers and the computer emergency response team. That is CERT. We call it as a CERT, and you might have a suffix called IN. That is CERT India. So these are computer emergency response teams who are responsible, and the service providers, because they know what type of a traffic is coming to your network, right? So threat intelligence is to help an organization understand common and severe external threats such as zero-day exploit threats and advanced persistent threats, also known as APTS. This threat intelligence helps organization to protect itself from attacks. So this is all about module 4, which I could summarize it in the best possible way. I'm sorry that I was a little fast because otherwise the length of the video goes beyond getting it put on across the platforms. I hope you will find this information useful. Shortly, I'll be releasing for module 5 and 6, along with the practice questions with explanation. Thank you all for watching this. Have a great day.